are moments in life when everything outside seems unbearably loud, and yet, within us, something begins to whisper in silence. And strangely enough, it is in that silence, not in the noise, that the deepest truths begin to reveal themselves. We have been taught to believe that when the body grows quiet, something must be wrong, that we have lost desire, lost passion, lost the very spark of life. But what if that silence is not absence at all? What if it is the beginning of something far greater? The soul's first whisper. Imagine a woman who no longer feels the rush of attraction as she once did. To the world, she might appear as though something inside her is fading. But in truth, something far more powerful is being born. Carl Jung believed that when energy is repressed or withdrawn on the surface, it does not vanish. It transforms. It finds a new path, a deeper channel through which to speak. So when the body no longer chases after fleeting pleasure, the soul steps forward. And in that moment, a whole new dimension of being quietly begins to open. Have you ever felt this? A season in your own life when you pulled away, not because you were broken, but because you were secretly preparing to transform. This is the journey I want to invite you into today. Together, we will explore why silence is not weakness, not punishment, but a hidden power. We will see how what seems like absence is, in truth, a deeper form of presence. And I promise you this, as we journey further, each part will peel back another layer, how silence becomes strength, how solitude reveals wisdom, and how what looks like abstinence can become not loss, but liberation. Take a deep breath with me here, because what you are about to hear is not about denying love, nor rejecting passion. It is about reclaiming your essence. It is about remembering the self that existed long before the world told you who you had to be. And let me ask you, sincerely, have you ever lived through a time when your body felt quiet, yet your soul stirred with an unnamed longing? If you have, share it in the comments. Sometimes your words may be the mirror that another heart desperately needs, the reminder that they are not alone. Jung described this as the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming whole. A path that rarely begins with applause or recognition, but with silence. That silence can feel uncomfortable, even frightening at first. But if you stay with it, if you dare to listen, you may discover that it holds more truth than all the voices outside combined. Think of winter. The trees appear dead, stripped bare, lifeless. Yet beneath the frozen ground, roots are strengthening, seeds are preparing. Winter is not the end. It is the preparation for spring. In the same way, the silence of the body is not emptiness. It is the fertile soil of the soul where something unseen is preparing to bloom. And perhaps you've already noticed this in your own life. In those moments of stillness, your dreams may become sharper, your intuitions stronger. It is as if the unconscious, long silenced by noise and distraction, finally finds the space to speak. Jung would call this the shadow stepping into the light, not to destroy you, but to guide you back to yourself. This is why silence is not emptiness. It is a language, a forgotten voice of the inner self. But let us be honest, this path is not for everyone. Society fears the woman who withdraws into silence. She becomes unpredictable, mysterious, untouchable. And maybe you, listening now, have felt that too. The unease of no longer fitting into old definitions, the discomfort of being different, of stepping out of the roles the world created for you. Yet that unease is not weakness. It is the first tremor of strength, the first signal that you are no longer content with the surface, that you are ready to go deeper. And though the world may not understand, the silence within you is not a void. It is the beginning of power. So stay with me, because in the parts ahead, we will uncover why this silence at first feels like loneliness, why it tests you with doubt and temptation, and why enduring it is the very thing that reshapes you. Later, we will see how silence becomes fire, how absence becomes abundance, and how a woman who has heard her soul can never again accept the low volume of an ordinary life. And remember this: silence is not the end of your story. It is the first line of a new chapter. There comes a time in life when the body suddenly grows quiet, as if all the familiar impulses have faded away. Desire no longer stirs as it once did. The appetite for constant activity disappears, and we may ask ourselves, am I losing something essential? Is there something wrong with me? But if we look closer, this silence is not a sign of absence. It is an invitation, a pause through which something deeper begins to speak. Carl Jung once wrote, "What we deny within ourselves returns as fate." And in this silence, what has long been denied begins to rise. It is not noise, it is not chaos, but a soft whisper, subtle, persistent, guiding. It is not emptiness, but another form of life that has been waiting to emerge. Imagine a river. When its surface is turbulent, you see only waves and ripples. But when it becomes still, you can glimpse the depths beneath. The silence of the body is like that still water. It allows us to see further, to sense more. Many people are surprised when, during periods of inner quiet, their dreams become sharper, their intuition more alive, their perception more refined. This is not coincidence. It is the soul reclaiming its voice. Modern society conditions us to believe that our worth is tied to movement, stimulation, constant desire, constant conquest. To stop, to pause, to turn inward is often seen as weakness or even failure. And yet, within this pause lies a kind of strength the outside world cannot touch. The strength of no longer needing to be defined by external validation. The strength of finding presence within. Perhaps you have felt it. A time when you withdrew from noise and superficial connections. At first, you may have felt empty, restless, or even lost. But slowly you realized that this emptiness was not a void. It was space. Space in which you could begin to grow. Space in which the true self, long silenced, could finally take form. Jung called this stage the encounter with the shadow. The moment when everything we have pushed aside, the emotions we buried, the desires we repressed, the truths we refused, returns to stand before us. And often, this encounter feels uncomfortable. It brings unease, confusion, even fear. But it is precisely in that discomfort that authenticity begins to surface. No longer the self that was adapted for approval, but the self that has been waiting patiently for the chance to be seen. Have you ever felt that strange, nameless longing? A sense of nostalgia without an object? It is not a yearning for another person, nor for a single moment of the past. It is a longing for yourself, the self you have not yet met fully, but somehow know exists. That longing is the soul calling you home. Silence, then, is not an ending. It is a doorway into individuation, the journey of becoming whole, where you are no longer trapped in roles, no longer defined by external eyes, but free to live as your true self. But let us be honest, walking through this doorway is not easy. The path begins not with peace, but with trial. Loneliness appears, doubt creeps in, temptations whisper for us to return to what is familiar. Those around us may not understand. Friends may say, "Why have you changed? Why are you distant?" Family may urge, "Go out more, reconnect, don't isolate yourself." But this is not isolation. It is immersion. It is a turning inward, a descent into one's own depths, and not everyone is ready to take it. And yet, within that descent, something remarkable begins. The body is not weakening, it is conserving. It is gathering strength for a transformation that cannot be seen from the outside. Think of the cocoon. To the world, it looks like confinement, stillness, even death. But inside, a new life is being formed. The cocoon is not punishment. It is preparation for wings. This is the paradox of silence. At first, it feels heavy, meaningless, even punishing. But in truth, it is the soil of transformation. The silence of the body is the place where the soul prepares to be reborn. And here is my promise. In the next part, we will step deeper into this trial. We will explore why silence feels so painful at first, why many give up and return to old patterns, and why those who endure discover a power unlike anything they have ever known. We will see how the darkness is not a prison, but a passage, and why the ones who continue, even through doubt and tears, awaken to a strength that no external approval can ever give them. So, if you are in a season of quiet, do not mistake it for failure. See it instead as an invitation to listen to the whispers you once ignored, an invitation to meet yourself in a way you never have before. Every journey of transformation begins with a test. Silence, at first, seems gentle, almost comforting, but soon it sharpens into something more difficult. What once felt like rest now feels like exile. What once felt like clarity now turns into confusion. This is the nature of the trial. Carl Jung described it as the confrontation with the shadow. It is that moment when the parts of ourselves we've long suppressed rise up and demand attention. The insecurities we ignored, the wounds we covered, the desires we repressed. They all surface in the stillness. And suddenly, silence is not serene anymore. It feels heavy, almost unbearable. In this stage, many begin to doubt. Was I wrong to step away from the noise? Am I isolating myself too much? Am I wasting my time, my youth, my opportunities? These questions creep in like shadows stretching across the walls of the soul. The old patterns call out, the easy distractions, the familiar relationships, the quick validations. Temptations reappear, knocking at the door, whispering, "Come back." It was easier before, and perhaps you felt it. The strange discomfort of no longer fitting into the life you once knew, yet not fully belonging to the new life either. You're in between, suspended, a liminal space where the old is gone, but the new has not yet taken form. And in this fragile place, the urge to give up can be overwhelming. Society makes the trial even harder. Everywhere, the world screams, keep moving, don't waste time, desire more, achieve more, be seen, be wanted. And suddenly, when you no longer fit that mold, you feel invisible. You are no longer the role others recognized. Not the lover, not the achiever, not the entertainer, not the one who fulfills expectations. You are simply yourself. And at first, that feels like the greatest loss of all. But here is the truth. It is not loss. It is unveiling. The roles that once defined you are falling away, not to destroy you, but to reveal what lies beneath. The trial is not easy. It feels like walking through darkness with no map, no torch, no companion. Friends may not understand. Family may worry. You may feel as though no one sees what you are enduring. And perhaps that is true, because this journey is not visible from the outside. It happens in the silence of the soul. Think of the cocoon again. From the outside, it looks like nothing but stillness. But inside, everything is breaking down, cells dissolving, structures collapsing, so that a new form can emerge. The trial of silence works the same way. It dismantles everything familiar so that a new wholeness can take shape. And here lies the most painful paradox. In the midst of this dismantling, the ego panics. It feels as though it is dying, because in a sense, it is. The masks, the adaptations, the false selves, they are losing their grip. And the soul is quietly, steadily taking the lead. This stage is brutal, but it is sacred. It is the fire in which the old identity burns away. And if you endure it, if you resist the urge to run back to comfort, something extraordinary begins to form. The pain you feel is not the pain of failure. It is the pain of transition, the tightening cocoon before the butterfly emerges. Can you feel that? Have you ever stood at the edge of change, torn between going back to what is safe and stepping forward into the unknown? If you have, you know the tension I speak of. That is the trial. That is the encounter with the shadow. And I want to promise you this. In the next part, we will explore what happens after this trial, when the silence begins to shift, when the darkness that once felt unbearable transforms into the birthplace of a new strength. You will see why enduring the shadows is not a punishment, but the very initiation into a deeper, freer life. So, if you are in this trial now, lonely, doubtful, tempted to return to old patterns, hold on. You are not failing. You are becoming. After the storm of trial, after nights that seemed endless, there comes a moment when silence begins to change. It no longer feels like a heavy void pressing down, but like fertile space charged with hidden possibility. This is the turning point when darkness stops being a weight and becomes the soil of transformation. Imagine a lotus seed. Placed on dry ground, it would remain hard, dormant, meaningless. But when dropped into the depths of the mud, the seed endures suffocation, dampness, even a kind of decay. And yet, it is precisely in that darkness, in that heavy soil, that it awakens. Roots push downward, shoots rise upward, and one day, from the bottom of the pond, it pierces the surface to become a lotus flower, radiant, pure, untouched by the very mud that nourished it. Transformation in human life works the same way. We cannot grow on the flat, dry soil of constant safety. We grow in the mud of challenge, in the silence of discomfort, in the nights where everything feels uncertain. It is in the places that once frightened us that the deepest strength is born. What we thought would destroy us becomes the very ground from which we rise. Carl Jung once said, "In the darkest places of the soul, the most precious treasures are hidden." And indeed, once the confrontation with the shadow is endured, a new energy begins to stir. It is not the restless energy of chasing after validation, not the hunger for external proof. It is a quiet but powerful force, the energy of self-presence, unshaken, untouchable. At this stage, something subtle but profound changes. You no longer long to be chosen. You no longer need another's gaze to affirm your worth. Instead, you begin to choose yourself. Your presence no longer depends on recognition. It becomes its own foundation. You move not to please, but to live truthfully. You may notice this shift in small ways. The relationships that once threw you into turmoil no longer hold the same power. The judgments that once pierced your heart now pass by like passing weather. The empty spaces that once filled you with fear now become room to breathe, to rest, to listen inwardly. Like the lotus, you realize, the mud was never your enemy. The mud was your teacher. Without it, the flower could not bloom. Without the silence, there would be no awakening. Without the darkness, there would be no light. And without the fractures, there could be no resilience. This is the essence of transformation. What once looked like punishment becomes preparation. What once felt like exile becomes empowerment. You carry within you a new kind of strength, one that the world cannot manipulate because it no longer comes from the world. And in the next part, we will dive deeper into the nature of this power, why the world often fears those who embody it, and how to nurture the flame within so that it never fades. Because once you have heard the voice of your soul, you can never again settle for the shallow noise of an ordinary life. Silence, which once felt like emptiness, has revealed itself as presence. The trial, which once felt like exile, has become initiation. And the darkness, which once felt unbearable, has proven itself to be the very soil of transformation. Looking back, the body's quiet was never a punishment. It was a ritual, a language, a doorway. It was the way the soul chose to speak when all other voices had grown too loud. And perhaps you see it now. What began as loss has become liberation. The masks that once defined you have fallen away, and what remains is not a fragment, but something whole. Not weakness, but strength. Not absence, but abundance. Like the lotus emerging from the mud, you carry within you a new kind of power. Silent, unshakable, radiant from within. It is not a power that begs to be seen. It is a power that simply is. And in that presence, you are no longer controlled by the need for recognition. You are free to walk in the fullness of yourself. Carl Jung said, "What we deny submits us. What we integrate transforms us." And in listening to silence, you have begun the work of integration. You have turned lack into wholeness, shadow into light, and silence into a sacred altar. Now, I want to ask you, from where you stand today, do you feel that silence differently? Has it shifted from something you feared into something you can now embrace? If so, share your reflection, because your words may not only affirm your own journey, but they may also light a path for someone else who is quietly listening. And if this journey has touched you, if you wish to continue walking deeper into the landscapes of soul and psychology, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, each video is not just information, but a ritual, a small spark to keep the fire of self-discovery alive. Remember, silence is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. It is the proof that within you lies a strength that cannot be taken, a wisdom that cannot be silenced, a light that no darkness can extinguish. Carry that truth with you. Let it guide your steps, soften your doubts, and remind you that what feels like emptiness may, in fact, be the richest presence of all. And as you move forward, may you walk not in fear of silence, but in reverence for it. For in that silence, your soul has found its voice, and once you have heard it, you will never again settle for less.